It began with a glance, the sort of glance that lingers just a moment too long to be casual, yet not quite enough to be declared love. A glance that carried with it the promise of something dangerous, something that could not be trusted. To her it was thrilling. To him it was a game. They met in the soft glow of a late evening cafe, a place filled with the clatter of cups and the murmur of half-told secrets. He was smooth in the way he spoke, measured in the way he moved, as if every gesture was rehearsed to perfection. His words dripped with charm, each syllable wrapping itself around her doubts, pulling them tighter until she could no longer tell where reason ended and desire began. She wanted to believe him, of course she did. That's the first trick in this kind of story, the hope that blinds. He told her he had never met anyone like her, that fate had worked its strange magic by placing them in the same place at the same time. She laughed, brushed off the cheesiness, yet found herself holding on to the words as though they were hers to keep. That's how it always begins, with borrowed lines and stolen sincerity. His phone was always turned face down. He excused the unanswered calls as business, the late-night messages as responsibilities he couldn't ignore. She accepted them, at first. Love, or the illusion of it, has a way of erasing red flags. Weeks stretched into months, and with each gift, each sudden disappearance followed by a grand apology, she began to sense a rhythm. Lies are never random. They fall into patterns like verses of a practice song. There was the night she caught him smiling at his reflection while rehearsing a compliment he would later give her, word for word. She pretended not to notice. Another evening, she overheard him repeating the same story to another woman at a party, the same joke he had once told her that made her believe he was unique. Her chest tightened, but she stayed quiet. After all, when love is promised, who wants to be the one to tear away the veil and face the emptiness beneath? But the truth has a way of breaking through. She found the messages eventually. Different names, the same tone, the same declarations of affection scattered like broken glass across his phone. It wasn't love. It was a performance, and she was just one in a long line of audiences who mistook the act for authenticity. She replayed their moments in her mind, searching for the places where she could have stopped herself, but the realization was bitter. He never lied because she was foolish. He lied because that was his way of surviving, of taking what he wanted without ever giving anything real in return. The hardest part wasn't the betrayal, it was the silence that followed. The silence of knowing that everything she had believed in, every whispered confession, every lingering touch, was part of a script. The man she thought she loved didn't exist. What stood before her was an illusion made of stolen phrases and calculated gestures, a classic cheat of romance that countless others had fallen for before her. And yet, in the quiet aftermath, she learned something he never intended to teach. Love is not found in grand promises or the sweetness of well-rehearsed lies. It exists in the unpolished truths, in the flaws that are never hidden, in the trust that doesn't need to be begged for. His lies unmasked themselves, and with them, they unmasked her strength. She walked away not with heartbreak, but with clarity, the kind of clarity that can only come after standing too close to the fire and finally understanding what burns. In the end, the question no longer haunted her.
Was it love or a lie?
It had always been a lie, but in discovering it, she found something greater than what he ever pretended to offer. She found herself. He wasn't the only one, though. The world is full of them, artists of deception, weaving the same tired tricks into different shapes, convincing hearts to fall where trust should not have been planted. Each story wears a different face, but beneath it all, the rhythm of the lies stays the same. There was the friend of a friend, the one everyone admired for his devotion. He never missed a birthday, sent flowers without reason, and told his partner she was the only one who mattered. But when the nights grew longer and her suspicions grew sharper, she traced the receipts, the overlapping dates, the same bouquet sent to another woman 2 cities away. He was a man who loved the performance of loyalty, but never the weight of commitment. To him, devotion was a mask he put on when the lights were bright, then discarded when no one was watching. And then there was the woman who made her living from illusions. She knew how to look into someone's eyes and make them feel like they were the only soul that existed. She would promise forever with a smile and slip away once the gifts had been unwrapped, once the bank accounts had quietly been drained. Her lies weren't the kind that came from carelessness. They were deliberate, crafted like jewels, polished until they shone brighter than the truth. Those who loved her learned too late that affection had been nothing more than currency in her world of beautifully dressed fraud. Others carried their deceptions more subtly. The man who kept a second phone hidden deep in the glove box of his car. The woman who claimed she was staying late at work when she was rehearsing the same words of endearment in another stranger's bed. The couple who pretended to be devoted partners in public, all the while each one whispering different promises into different ears. Love, in these stories, became less about connection and more about control, less about honesty and more about possession. The cruelest part of such lies was not the betrayal itself, but the confusion they sowed. Victims of these cheats began to doubt not only the love that had been offered, but love itself. They looked at future kindness with suspicion, dissected every compliment for hidden motives, wondered if sincerity was nothing more than another mask waiting to slip. That was the true cost of such deceit, not just broken hearts, but hearts that no longer trusted themselves to feel. And yet, even within the wreckage, there was a lesson whispered quietly through the cracks. Lies may dazzle for a time, but they cannot hold. They crumble under their own weight, leaving the deceivers to chase new stages, new audiences, while those who were deceived carry scars that eventually turn into strength. For every heart broken by a false promise, another learns to recognize the subtle signs, to demand honesty, to value love not for its glitter, but for its grit. Because real love, the kind untouched by these cheats, is unremarkable in its beginning. It does not enter with grand declarations or perfect lines rehearsed like poetry. It grows in the small, unguarded moments, when the phone is left unlocked, when the flaws are admitted without fear, when silence feels safe rather than heavy. So the question lingers, whispered into the ears of anyone standing on the threshold of new affection. Is it love or a lie? The answer is never immediate. It must be tested, weighed, and sometimes painfully revealed. And though the cheats will always exist, chasing their reflections in the glass of other people's hope, those who have seen behind the mask will know the truth. Love is not a performance, and anything that feels like one will eventually collapse. The cruelest part of such lies was not the betrayal itself, but the confusion they sowed. Victims of these cheats began to doubt not only the love that had been offered, but love itself. They looked at future kindness with suspicion, dissected every compliment for hidden motives, wondered if sincerity was nothing more than another mask waiting to slip. That was the true cost of such deceit, not just broken hearts, but hearts that no longer trusted themselves to feel. And yet, even within the wreckage, there was a lesson whispered quietly through the cracks. Lies may dazzle for a time, but they cannot hold. They crumble under their own weight, leaving the deceivers to chase new stages, new audiences, while those who were deceived carry scars that eventually turn into strength. For every heart broken by a false promise, another learns to recognize the subtle signs, to demand honesty, to value love not for its glitter, but for its grit. Because real love, the kind untouched by these cheats, is unremarkable in its beginning. It does not enter with grand declarations or perfect lines rehearsed like poetry. It grows in the small, unguarded moments, when the phone is left unlocked, when the flaws are admitted without fear, when silence feels safe rather than heavy. So the question lingers, whispered into the ears of anyone standing on the threshold of new affection. Is it love or a lie? The answer is never immediate. It must be tested, weighed, and sometimes painfully revealed. And though the cheats will always exist, chasing their reflections in the glass of other people's hope, those who have seen behind the mask will know the truth. Love is not a performance, and anything that feels like one will eventually collapse. The thing about lies and love is that they rarely come alone. They arrive like shadows, slipping into the corners of tender moments, feeding off trust until the truth can no longer be seen clearly. And for every person who falls for the first deception, there is another who finds themselves tangled in a web that stretches far beyond what they imagined. There was Eleanor, who believed she had found her soulmate in a man who claimed to love poetry as deeply as she did. He quoted verses in candlelight, recited lines as if they had sprung from his soul, and she marveled at the sensitivity she thought was rare in men. Only later, when she found the old books tucked away in his drawer, did she realize every word had been stolen. Not a single verse was his own. He had built his image out of borrowed words, constructing a love story from the pages of strangers, while never offering a line of his own heart. The cheat was not in the romance itself, but in the theft of authenticity. She had loved a ghost made of echoes. Then there was Daniel, the quiet one, the man whose lies were not flamboyant but subtle, steady, patient. He told his girlfriend he needed time to build a future for them, that his long nights and silent weekends were sacrifices for their life together. She believed him, supported him, even defended his absences when her friends whispered warnings. But Daniel's future was never meant for her. Each coin saved, each hour spent away, was invested in another woman across the city, a woman who never knew her rival existed. His lie was not about passion but about time, and when the truth surfaced, it wasn't just love that shattered, but the years she could never reclaim. Anne Maria, the one who became her own deceiver. She loved a man who seemed to love her, but deep down she felt the cracks. She saw the way his eyes lingered elsewhere, heard the laughter that wasn't meant for her. But instead of facing it, she told herself stories. She whispered lies into her own reflection, convincing herself he was simply distracted, simply tired, simply waiting for the right moment to prove his devotion. In the end, when he walked away without explanation, it wasn't his betrayal that hurt most, it was her own. The realization that she had built her love on lies, she had fed herself to avoid the truth. The classic cheats of romance wear countless disguises. Some are loud, bold, and shameless. Others are quiet, nearly invisible until the damage is done. They exploit hope, the most fragile of human needs, and dress themselves in the colors of affection. A kiss can hide 1,000 unspoken betrayals. A promise can mask an intention to abandon. A gift can be payment for silence rather than an offering of care. But in every story, when the lies fall apart, what remains is not just pain. There is also the unveiling of resilience. Those who have been deceived learn to read the pauses between words, to trust actions over declarations, to see that real love does not need constant proof because it lives in consistency. The cheat's greatest weapon, illusion, becomes powerless against the eyes of someone who has already been burned. And so, while the question always lingers, is it love or a lie? The answer is never eternal. Lies can wear the mask of love, and love can sometimes be mistaken for a lie. The truth is uncovered only in time, through patience, through the courage to see beyond the glitter of performance. The cheats will always exist, wandering from heart to heart, weaving their shallow webs. But the ones who survive them carry something stronger than bitterness. They carry wisdom. They know that love cannot be stolen, borrowed, or faked forever. And when the real thing finally arrives, quiet and unassuming, they recognize it not for what it pretends to be, but for what it truly is.